Kafka finally became an official defense troop member, bringing him one step closer to fighting alongside Mina against the Kaiju. On the other hand, alongside this exciting news, we were introduced to a new monster that has the potential to become their major new adversary. In this video, we will see what this humanoid Kaiju brings to the table and just how powerful it is. Upon returning to the office, Hoshina reviewed the files they had on Kaiju number 8 again, recalling the odd human-like sensation he felt when fighting it, and the fact that monster number 9 could use human language and transform into a human, which made him wonder what was happening with those monsters. While that was happening, Kafka went to the rooftop to reflect on Hoshina's remark about having 1% expectation of him. After some introspection, Kafka regained his composure by slapping himself and decided to meet the expectations set for him, believing he had taken the first step. Feeling sleepy, he walked back to his room to sleep, recalling what Hoshina had told him previously, that sleeping was also part of the job. Meanwhile, something rapidly approached from the sky, gradually getting closer to the base. As Kafka walked back, objects fell behind him like meteors due to their high speed. When Kafka turned around, these objects had crashed to the ground, causing loud explosions and noise. Kafka was startled by the force of the impact, which also woke up other troops like Hikaru, Reno, Iharu, and others. Hoshina was also shocked and immediately stood up from his seat. He quickly asked Okanaji what was happening and called the control room. Okanaji explained that dozens of monsters had appeared within their base area. Looking at the current situation, it was most likely a sky raid by monsters, which surprised Hoshina. The estimated resilience of the monsters that arrived ranged from 6.2 to 6.4, so each of the individual monsters were considered base-level monsters. The monsters spread throughout their base, quickly causing chaos. One of them attacked a building with a fireball from its mouth, causing significant damage upon impact. Hoshina immediately suited up and ordered all the night guards to prepare for combat, and he had Okanaji send an emergency dispatch order to the off-duty troops, instructing everyone to be ready to fight. They were to try to keep the Kaiju within the training grounds as much as possible and prevent them from leaving the base. Hoshina thought that there were no reports of damage outside their base, so perhaps the monster's objective was the base itself. Kafka was shocked by the chaos he was witnessing and wondered what was happening. He saw that their base was engulfed in flames, which worried him. Kafka noticed that the monsters that had arrived were pterosaur type, and as he pondered why such types of monsters had come, he realized something. If that was the case, then there really was something unusual. He immediately called Hoshina, asking if he was okay, to which he agreed but mentioned that something was bothering him. Hoshina told him to report, so Kafka explained that since the 70s, there had been 19 recorded pterosaur-type monsters, and all of them shared a certain characteristic. They were all solitary. However, contrary to this, they had arrived in a group, leading Hoshina to realize there was one explanation for this. There was a monster among them powerful enough to control the prideful pterosaur types and intelligent enough to act with a motive. A powerful leader. When he looked behind, he saw it. Another humanoid Kaiju. It spoke and said that it had spotted a troop member, and its target was locked on Hoshina. Hoshina's expression turned serious, and he told Kafka that he needed to leave the call. Kafka thought that the monster leading the attack was incredibly strong because that type of Kaiju is naturally powerful, which made him worry about Hoshina as well. The monster slowly approached Hoshina, and it turned out to be the leader of those flying Kaiju. The Kaiju stretched while asking who was the strongest at the base. Hoshina was surprised to hear the Kaiju speak, and he responded that since their commander was not there, he was currently the strongest present. The Kaiju nodded, raised its hand, and seemed to settle the matter. The monster prepared to strike and declared that Hoshina would be its prey. When the monster flicked its attack, Hoshina was surprised by the speed with which had approached him, but fortunately, he managed to dodge it. Otherwise, his face would have shattered like the wall behind him. Hoshina and the others looked on, and Okanaji quickly informed them that the resilience level of the Kaiju was 8.3, classifying it as a mega monster. Hoshina immediately called Ikaruga, instructing him to take the lead in handling the after beasts and to prioritize the civilians while maintaining the functions of the building. While Hoshina was still talking, the monster charged again and was impressed that Hoshina had dodged its previous attack, thus passing its test. The monster punched quickly, and upon landing solidly, it caused destruction around it. It appeared that Hoshina dodged it, and he seriously declared that he himself would kill that kaiju. The monster's face opened up like another mouth and declared that it was time for Hoshina's extermination. It emitted a signal around the area, catching the attention of the after beasts. They screeched loudly, which Hoshina noticed, confirming his suspicion that the base was their target. The kaiju punched again, and Hoshina narrowly dodged it. The impact of the kaiju's punch exploded the area it hit, shocking Hoshina, and due to its immense force, it could be compared to a meteor. He knew that if he were hit even once by it, it would certainly be his end. The kaiju repeatedly punched him. However, even though his katana made contact, the skin of the kaiju was too tough, tougher even than that of number 8. Meanwhile, on the east side of the base, Ikaruga led the troop members there to hold back the after beasts present. The defense force fired at them, but when the smoke cleared, they saw that their attacks had no effect, and the after beasts countered with their fireballs. Kafka became concerned when he heard the screams from the east side, so he immediately informed those fighting there that they would not be able to handle it if they confronted the beasts head-on, and they should target the back, the same type of monster recorded in 03. Reno and Ihara heard him, and Reno was worried because Kafka had not been responding earlier. So Kafka explained that he was talking to Hoshina. Kafka added information on how to fight the kaiju they were facing, noting that the front side is vulnerable when they are flying, and he was sure that their cores were near the back. He also mentioned that the back of that type is the softest part to reduce the weight of the monsters. Ikaruga thanked him for the information and immediately split his group into 2 teams, one to lure and the other to attack from the back simultaneously. Aoi and Haruchi quickly followed suit and charged in. Aoi told Haruchi that he would handle the distraction and Haruchi would go behind the monsters. Haruchi quickly moved behind the kaiju and released his full force, reaching 36%. He did not expect another kaiju to emerge beside him, which immediately charged a fireball attack. It hit Haruchi, knocking him off his position. Haruchi couldn't believe that the kaiju were cooperating with each other. Ikaruga worried about Hoshina and immediately informed Kafka that they were unable to flank, had failed there, and were being harassed by the kaiju. Haruchi pondered what they should do if they couldn't get behind them. Suddenly, Hikaru spoke up and said there was another way to defeat those kaiju. Iharu was puzzled by what she meant, and she quickly charged at the kaiju. Iharu was surprised by Hikaru's speed as she passed by him. Hikaru struck an after beast hard, managing to destroy its body with a large axe. Kafka, Iharu, and Reno were shocked and stared at her. Hikaru bragged that the method she was referring to was simply using her overwhelming force to bring them down. We returned to a point in time when Hikaru first received her giant axe. Mina said she would be given a personal weapon, which surprised Hikaru because she thought those were only given to commanders. So Mina explained that under normal circumstances she would be correct, but they had decided based on the current situation. The strength and number of monsters that year were abnormal, so they decided to make Hikaru the third pillar of their main force, following the commander and vice commander. Joy was evident in Hikaru's eyes as she was told that from then on, as the third force, she should annihilate the monsters. Returning to the present, Hikaru commented that even though her equipment was still a prototype, it was sufficient, and if she had any complaints, it was that it was too brutish and not quite fitting for her. Iharf couldn't believe that Hikaru had managed to take down the after beast, even attacking its hardest part. Proudly, Hikaru stated that she wouldn't let those monsters do as they pleased on her battlefield. Hikaru charged again at another after beast, which tried to attack her with a fireball, but she dodged it and leaped to the side. She recalled Hoshina explaining that the main material of her equipment was the uni organ from the main beast that was subjugated 2 years ago in Shinagawa, and pulling the trigger would send a strong electric current that releases a shockwave. She was told that the first application while in motion would create a shock wave that emanates backwards. When Kikaru attacked, she did just that, and her attack accelerated quickly, and she called her attack the Troop Style Axe Technique First Form, Lightning Strike. After defeating one, another After Beast charged at her. She was informed that the second application of using the trigger was to send a shockwave forward at the moment of impact. She used the second form, Cutwater, on that monster, and it easily shattered the body of the kaiju. Ihara was amazed, and Reno commented on Kikaru's earlier statement that the weapon didn't suit her, saying it was actually perfect for her aggressive and high-handed personality. Kikaru looked for her next target and was surprised when one appeared in the air, and as she was about to attack, several attacks hit the monster, and the hits were enveloped by a gel-like substance. Kikaru was shocked when she noticed that Reno had used a gelation bullet to bring it down to the floor. Reno told her not to lower her guard because monsters were also attacking from above. When the monster stood again, Reno targeted it again and shot it with gelation bullets, which amazed Kikaru because she did not expect that Reno could cause such damage to such a high-level monster. Kikaru followed up on Reno's attack, using her third form, Half Moon, to behead the monster. After that attack, she told Reno that she would make him her support if he could keep up with her, to which Reno accepted the challenge, and Kikaru declared that they would be the skirmishers who would disrupt the enemies. Ikaruga then informed the others about what Kikaru and Reno were planning, and they would return to the previous operation strategy of splitting up to attack from the rear. While that was happening, we returned to Hoshina and the leader of the kaiju. Hoshina was pleased because it seemed that Kikaru was doing well, but that satisfaction quickly disappeared when the boss kaiju attacked him again, and he remarked that this monster was really the problem. It managed to slice his cheek, which made his eyes widen. After the kaiju's jump attack, it quickly followed up with rapid punches, which Hoshina managed to dodge while also trying to slice its hands. The truck behind him was destroyed by the dodged attacks of the monster, and Okaneji couldn't believe the strength of the kaiju he was witnessing. Hoshina thought that was not the only fact, and it seemed like the monster was actually enjoying the fight. He suddenly ordered Okaneji to open gate number 3, which Okaneji promptly did. Hoshina commented that the psychological state displayed by his kaiju opponent clearly surpassed the category of being a mere monster. After the gate opened, Hoshina immediately came out, and the monster managed to crush the large gate. Hoshina was annoyed because opening the gate was useless, and it was very expensive. He lost focus briefly, so the monster suddenly disappeared from his line of sight. While searching for the monster, it suddenly appeared beside him, commenting that Hoshina should be proud because most monsters couldn't exchange blows with him for that long. The kaiju frighteningly said that it wanted to eat Hoshina whole and convert him into energy. It quickly threw a powerful punch, which Hoshina tried to block. Due to the force of the punch, veins appeared on Hoshina's face, and he was thrown against a wall, creating a large hole. Okaneji was very worried about the vice commander, and the kaiju commented that Hoshina was a worthy opponent. While boasting, the monster's hand was suddenly severed, and Hoshina then spoke, apologizing to Okaneji for not making a request due to the urgency, but asked if it was correct that they wouldn't have to worry about involving troop members if he used his full power there. He then used his full released force, which reached 92%, and declared that they would now begin the subjugation. While that was happening, let's shift to another part of the base where a troop member was endangered when cornered by an after beast. Just when she thought it was her end, Kafka quickly arrived in a partial transformation. The kaiju attacked, but Kafka managed to save the woman there. It turns out that this woman's name is Minase, and she thanked him. Minase commented that it seemed he was now able to use the power of his suit, at which Kafka swallowed nervously, and explained that of course he could, since he was now an official troop member. The after beast prepared to attack them again from behind, so Kafka and she got ready to dodge. Unexpectedly, the body of the kaiju was destroyed by a powerful attack, surprising them both. It turned out to be Kikaru, and noticing that Reno was also there engaging the beast, Kafka smiled. Kikaru explained that she and Reno would handle the monsters, and asked Kafka and Minase to help the injured. They both agreed immediately, and before they moved on, Reno reminded Kafka not to do anything reckless since he was an official troop member and to trust their comrades there. Kafka understood and agreed, so Reno along with Kikaru and other troops charged forward, while Okaneji reported to them that the Nakanashima platoon had arrived at the base. Nakanashina apologized to Ikaruga for their delay, and the Ebina platoon also arrived, heading south to assist. Kafka and Minase were pleased by the arrival of the off-duty senior troop members to help out. Okaneji added that Kikaru and her squad had already defeated 2 more After Beasts, and the Takao platoon reported that they had organized the sniping team and were about to shoot the flying After Beasts using gelation bullets. The Itakura platoon also reported that the warehouse perimeter was secured. Kafka's hopes rose because even though they were in a critical situation without their commander, they were still managing to push back the enemies little by little. He then invited Minase to move and help the injured, to which she agreed. He was pleased because not only were Kikaru and Reno impressive there, but so were all the people present. He proudly stated that he was with them, and this is the 3rd unit. We returned to Hoshina and the leader of the Kaiju, where Hoshina commented that it was a mistake for the monster to have chosen to fight them, and they would win this battle. Hoshina prepared to attack, and in an instant, he quickly approached the Kaiju and managed to wound its body. The Kaiju commented that it was now being cut, even referencing earlier when its hand was severed. It noticed that Hoshina was accurately targeting the gaps in its shells, and suddenly the crater on its face opened again, commenting that what Hoshina was doing was boring. The Kaiju boasted that once it figured out Hoshina's aim, his cheap tricks would no longer work on it. However, Hoshina easily slashed its body again, which confused it. Hoshina used a combo of his techniques, the Hoshina-style blade-cutting technique 2nd form, Cross Strike, and 4th form, Chaos Strike, which slashed different parts of its body. It turned out that targeting the gaps was just a diversion by Hoshina. The Kaiju seemed amused by this event and regenerated its wounds. The monster engaged with Hoshina again, commenting that this is how fighting should be, exchanging blows head-on with an opponent rivaling in strength. Hoshina continued to move quickly to attack and dodge the monster's punches, while the Kaiju repeatedly used the word rival as it matched Hoshina's moves. Soon, the Kaiju's right hand was sliced off in an instant, which surprised it. Hoshina appeared behind it and commented that its core was smaller than he had anticipated. Before the Kaiju could turn around, Hoshina had already slashed its entire body using his 6th form, Straight a Strike. People in the control room cheered, but Hoshina noticed something, and as he turned around, he shouted that it was not over yet. The monster's body seemed to bubble even though it had been slashed repeatedly by Hoshina earlier. The Kaiju kept growing like an inflating balloon, which surprised Hoshina and the others. Even though he was far away, Kafka suddenly felt a strong sensation, and Minase noticed his unease. He couldn't explain why his detection sense was working even though he wasn't in his Kaiju form, which made him worried about their vice commander. The Kaiju fighting Hoshina seemed to become a giant, and he wondered how that was happening, thinking that its core had shifted, which is why he hadn't completely destroyed it. Mouths appeared on the lumps of the Kaiju, and soon it released ultra-high temperature steam around the area, prompting Hoshina to quickly put on his mask, and he was thankful he had it with him. Okaneji informed him that along with the released heat of the Kaiju, its resilience was also increasing. The Kaiju gradually transformed, becoming a larger monster than before, and its resilience reached 9.0. Hoshina seemed like an insect compared to the size of that monster. Okaneji was overwhelmed by what he was witnessing and stated that this was no longer the type of enemy that their vice commander could defeat alone. The Kaiju threw a punch at Hoshina, causing significant damage to the ground. Okaneji was shocked, but fortunately, Hoshina managed to dodge and quickly ran towards the Kaiju's face to use his 3rd form, Revenge Strike. The giant Kaiju tried to catch the nimble Hoshina as he attacked it with extraordinary speed. Okaneji was amazed that Hoshina could adapt, But they both noticed that nevertheless, Hoshina's attacks were not penetrating the Kaiju's body, and that was the reason why Hoshina disliked large opponents. While thinking that he needed to use his speed to power through and pierce the core of the Kaiju, he suddenly felt a strong strain in his body. He stopped and suddenly blood trickled from his nose. Both he and Okaneji were startled, and it seemed that his suit was overheating because it was at its limit. Okaneji informed him that 10 minutes had passed since he released his full force, so if it continued, Hoshina's life would be at risk. Hoshina almost got hit by a punch from the Kaiju, but he managed to dodge it and commented that this meant he had only 1 minute left according to Okaneji. Suddenly, the Kaiju sent after beasts towards Hoshina, and just as he was preparing to slash them, the boss Kaiju inflated them. He did not expect this, and the after beast exploded right in front of him. Okaneji also couldn't believe that the after beast could self-destruct, while Hoshina mentally commented that such a cold-blooded, heartless attack was typical of a monster, likening them to living missiles. Fortunately, thanks to the smoke created by the Kaiju's attack, he was able to quickly get behind it. He quickly prepared to use his sixth form attack again, but when he saw the back of the Kaiju, it appeared to have many eyes there. Hoshina froze in place, and he could not dodge when the Kaiju punched him. The Kaiju's attack hit him solidly, causing him to be thrown violently into the buildings. Okaneji's concern for the vice commander was evident, while the Kaiju was still poised to attack again. As he sat against the wall, Hoshina's suit reached its limit, and the release force began to retract. It was shown that Hoshina was severely injured and bleeding due to the attacks from the Kaiju. Let's briefly go back to a time when Hoshina was young, and here, a man, perhaps his father, I'm not sure, was telling him to give up on becoming part of the defense force. He should have been recognized as a genius during the Endo period, but that era of swordplay had long passed, and he asked if Hoshina understood that. Okaneji was extremely worried and was tearfully calling out to the vice commander. But fortunately, Hoshina responded, smiling and saying it was all right because he was not dead yet. He had already deployed his shield, but the monster was incredibly strong, and his released force had deactivated. He asked Okaneji about the situation outside, and Okaneji explained that the evacuation of citizens was almost complete, and their fight against the after beasts had taken a favorable turn. Hoshina was pleased to hear this news, and so he felt he needed to fulfill his duty in the end. The giant Kaiju tried to punch him again, so Okaneji shouted that he was no longer in a state to fight again. The Kaiju's punch destroyed what it hit, but Hoshina managed to dodge and quickly used the Hoshina-style blade-cutting technique first form to slash the monster's chest. After making the cut, the Kaiju counterattacked, but he managed to dodge it. The Kaiju commented that it knew Hoshina's methods and that he wouldn't be able to defeat it with his puny sword. Hoshina moved away again, thinking that the Kaiju should just be quiet since he was well aware of it. There was another flashback where his father told him to give up on being a defense force troop because his released force with firearms was low, and in the current day and age, it wouldn't take him anywhere. An officer also told him that the appearance of larger monsters had increased in recent years, so fighting them with swords would likely lead to his death sooner or later. He advised Hoshina to become a sword technique instructor instead and leave the front lines to others. Returning to the present, Hoshina was extremely irritated with the monster and told it to stop saying those things because he had heard them many times since he was a child. Hoshina added that despite what was said to him in the past, Mina told him something different when he was applying to join. On the day they talked for his entry into the defense force, Hoshina thought Mina would say the same thing upon learning he was a sword specialist, so he expected her to tell him to give up. However, unexpectedly, she told him that she needed his power and asked him to join her unit. Hoshina was surprised, and Mina further explained that they couldn't simply dismiss the possibility of encountering powerful small-type monsters in the future, and that she and Mina were different because she was useless with blades. In fact, she disliked even holding a knife. So when Mina shoots the enemies, Hoshina could carve a path for her. Hoshina charged at the monster again, stating that Mina had trusted him to protect that area in her absence, so he would protect the base no matter what. When the Kaiju attacked, Hoshina quickly climbed onto its tail to ascend the body of the monster, and he launched a series of attacks starting with the second form, Cross Strike, then third form, Revenge Strike, fourth form, Chaos Strike, fifth form, Mist Strike. But when he was about to use the sixth form, unfortunately, the kaiju grabbed him with its hand, causing Okaniji to become even more worried. While running to the scene, Kafka saw what was happening. Kafka thought about Reno's earlier reminder not to do anything reckless, but he closed his eyes and made a decision. He called Reno and immediately apologized, and Reno realized what he meant and tried to stop him from transforming, explaining that if he transformed there, he could no longer hide his true identity because of the many camera drones around. As Kafka was transforming, he thought that a friend's life was more important than the issue at hand. He was suddenly interrupted when someone spoke and thanked them all for standing their ground. Kafka, Reno, Hikaru, and the other troops were surprised, and Okaniji noticed whose voice it was. Hoshina told the monster that he had won, which confused the kaiju. Suddenly, a large part of the left side of the kaiju was destroyed, allowing it to release Hoshina, which worried Kafka. Hoshina then explained that he was the vice commander of that base, and it was his duty to pass such matters to the commander. The one who arrived explained that due to urgency, she didn't have time to request, which Okaniji accepted as okay. It turns out Mina had arrived, and she immediately unleashed her full released force, which reached 96%, and she was about to blow up the giant monster they were fighting. The defense troops gained hope with the arrival of their commander, and the joy on Kafka's face was evident when he saw this. Mina fired again, supported by her pet white tiger to handle the recoil of her giant gun. Her attack hit the kaiju's shoulder, causing significant damage. The monster commanded the afterbeasts to attack Mina, and as Mina maneuvered herself, Hoshina informed her that the core of the giant kaiju was located around the 4th to 6th thoracic vertebrae on its backside. Mina commanded her pet, whose name turned out to be Bako, and it again supported her with the gun's recoil. Her attack struck the side of the monster, and Okaniji noted that the monster was now anticipating Mina's attack trajectory and that its recovery speed was also very fast. Despite struggling greatly, Hoshina tried to stand and commented that it wasn't surprising, deciding to push his limits one last time. He used his released force again, reaching 63%, and tried to slash the monster's legs with his techniques to weaken its mobility and create an opening for Mina. He nearly got stepped on by the giant, but fortunately, he dodged it. However, Okaniji was worried about him, saying that he was pushing himself too much and that his body and suit were at their limits. The areas Hoshina attacked were regenerating, so he pondered what to do next since he no longer had enough power output. Fortunately, Hikaru suddenly arrived, surprising him. Hikaru immediately used her cut water on the kaiju's foot, but it had no effect, which frustrated her, and she commented that even with her current power, she couldn't even scratch it. Hoshina charged again and stated that it didn't matter. She should just continue. Hoshina explained that he would take care of tearing the monster's shell, so she would just match the timing and attack where he attacked. Hikaru understood, and when Hoshina landed an attack, she immediately followed up with an attack on the same part he targeted. Their attack managed to throw the kaiju off balance, but soon Hikaru's body also strained from the excessive use of her maximum output. Hoshina noticed this and told her that what she did was enough. Hoshina used his 6th form Strata Strike again and managed to slice the kaiju's leg again. During this, Hoshina's only thought was that he should not give the monster time to regenerate, and asked his body to give him just 5 more seconds of strength to do so. He remembered what Mina had told him about carving the path for her attacks, so he used that as motivation and continued to push himself to keep slicing the kaiju so it couldn't regenerate because that was his proof of existence. Mina managed to hit the kaiju at its back, exposing its core. Okaniji informed them that one more shot could destroy it. Mina thanked Hoshina, expressing her gratitude that he was her partner, and now it was her turn to do her part. Mina prepared to attack again, while Hoshina explained to the kaiju that he was their commander, and hadn't he already told it that it had chosen the wrong opponent? The kaiju roared loudly, and soon, Mina destroyed the core of the kaiju with another powerful shot from her large gun. The head to the chest of the giant monster disappeared due to Mina's attack, and Kikaru and Hoshina looked on. Soon, the body of the kaiju completely collapsed, and Okaneji excitedly announced to the other defense force troops there that Mina, Hoshina, and Kikaru had defeated the base monster, which caused loud cheers from the troops. Mina breathed a sigh of relief, and Kafka saw her descending from the building. Kafka cried with joy, and Reno commented that it was expected of Mina to be strong, to which Kafka agreed and explained that his admiration for her since childhood was not misplaced. He remarked that the people around him, like Hoshina, were incredibly cool. When the three strongest among them saluted each other, Kafka cried and said he really hoped to be part of that group someday. Reno teased him, saying that he was really ugly crying, to which Kafka irritably responded that Reno couldn't see him right now, so Reno said he could imagine it. Kafka got annoyed and told Reno that he was unemotional while he was deeply feeling the emotions. Reno commented that they were just starting, so they should do their best there. Kafka smiled and agreed while watching Hoshina. On the other hand, Hoshina told Kikaru that he and Mina would take care of finishing off the after beasts and that she should rest. Mina then playfully hit Hoshina on the head and told him that he also needed to rest because in his current state, if they encountered a living after beast, he wouldn't be able to fight it, to which Hoshina agreed and mentioned that his suit was damaged and he would only be a liability. Hoshina just scratched his head and accepted Mina's offer to rest. However, while that was happening, a giant monster emerged above them, and it seemed to be a bunch of clumped-up after beasts. The three of them were shocked when they noticed it and wondered what kind of monster it was. Okaneji fearfully said it looked like a giant after beast bomb. Hoshina then realized that the roar made earlier by the giant kaiju was not a death throw. Mina immediately shouted to all the troop members there to leave the area and ordered Okaneji to send a magazine to Gate 83. In his mind, Hoshina thought it wouldn't reach in time and wondered what they would do. He thought that if the giant after-bomb beast exploded, it would surely obliterate their entire base from the map. Suddenly, he was called by the leader of the kaiju there, and it turned out that its head was still intact, and it commented that their battle seemed to be a tie, which shocked Hoshina. Kafka then ran past them, surprising and confounding Hoshina, Kikaru, and Mina. Hoshina tried to scold Kafka and stop him, but as Kafka ran, he noticed something. He couldn't believe Kafka's speed and thought that from any perspective, that wasn't the movement of someone with just 1% release force. Kafka jumped towards the after-beast bomb, and while thinking about his conversations with Hoshina and Mina about meeting Hoshina's expectations, he apologized. He fully transformed into his kaiju form, surprising Mina, Hoshina, and Reno, and Okaneji informed them that a reading of a mega monster had appeared in the middle of their base, with a resilience of 9.8. Kafka faced the bomb and roared loudly to express his anger, while Okaneji noticed that the reading he was seeing was Kaiju number 8. Hoshina's expression clearly showed his shock, and he thought to himself that he had already had suspicions about it. But even so, before he realized it, he had gotten close to Kafka and had dismissed the possibility from his mind. Kafka boldly confronted the conglomerate of after-beasts, while Mina couldn't believe what she was seeing, and Reno was utterly baffled, asking if Kafka knew what he was doing. In her mind, Hikaru was thinking that, aside from all that, if such a huge thing exploded, she was sure that most of the troop members there would die. Kafka again deployed rocket-like throttles from his body and declared that Hoshina had fought with all his might, risking his life, so he couldn't accept just sitting there and only protecting himself. Kafka positioned himself to punch, clenched his entire body, and when he jumped into the air, the force of his leap was so strong that it broke a large part of the ground, resembling a severe earthquake, and Hoshina's face showed disbelief. Kafka charged at the giant bomb, tightened his fist, and activated the throttle-like holes in his elbow to boost the power of his punch, and soon he struck the after-beast with extraordinary force. The strength of his punch was so great that it even damaged his own body. Reno was shocked while Kafka's eyes showed his intensity. The circular monster seemed to crumple under the impact of Kafka's punch as it was flung into the air. The defense troop members there saw it clearly, and their faces were indescribable as they watched. Even the leader of the Kaiju there couldn't believe what was happening. After that, Kafka quickly descended and landed next to one of the troops, and Mina immediately shouted for all the troops there to lie down and raise their shields to full power. Soon, the giant after beast bomb exploded, sending a very powerful shockwave around, and even though the bomb was far away, it still managed to destroy some of the buildings in the area. As the bomb destroyed buildings behind him, Kafka just stood there coolly. Gradually, the shockwave from the explosion dissipated, and he and Mina locked eyes, with Mina in disbelief that she was really looking at Kafka. After the loud explosion, Kafka just stood there while a troop member stared at him fearfully. He thought to himself that he had indeed revealed his secret, and that his arms and legs were destroyed because of what he had done earlier. He had pushed things too far without considering his age. He apologized to Reno as he ran towards him, and to Kikaru as well, who seemed unable to believe what was happening. Mina approached him, calling him by his full name. When he turned around, he saw many guns pointed at him, and Mina forced herself to aim a gun at Kafka, calling him Monster Number 8, and said that they would take him into custody. The sadness and despair in Kafka's eyes were evident as he transformed back into his human form.